Hello and welcome back to the Healthy Middle Ground podcast with me, Jen Curtis. This week, we're going to zoom out and we're going to talk about some of the basics. How to lose weight when you're a mum. I'm going to go over the top 10 things, I think actually 11 things that are going to get you the results that you're looking for. They're not necessarily always easy, but they are the easiest, most straightforward stuff you can do to get the needle moving in the right direction. The thing about fat loss is that it's actually really, really simple. And there are a few key things that you can do that really give you a lot of bang for your buck and give you a lot of return on investment for what you're doing. And it's about knowing what those key things are, what those big rocks are. And once you know what they are, you can have laser sharp focus on just executing those very few things, because it's not actually complicated. It's not actually all of these really difficult explanations about insulin and about blood sugar spikes and about your hormones and about cortisol and about all these other, there's so much bullshit in the industry, in the fat loss industry, in the wellness industry, marketed at women and marketed at mums in particular. And it's not anything complicated like that. It's not anything like really extreme or really restrictive that you need to do. You don't need to do a detox. You don't need to cut out carbs. You don't even need to cut out sugar. You don't have to eat perfectly clean all the time. There are actually just a few key things that you need to do and really focus on and do consistently and do really, really well. And when you know which levers to pull, you can get really good results with minimum effort. Not with no effort, it's always effort, but with much less effort than some of these other things that get you doing really complicated things and focusing on so much crap that get you spinning your wheels and doing so much work and then not actually getting the results. So that's what my entire business, my entire work is all about, is getting you to know what those big rocks are and getting you to do them consistently and getting you to stop listening to all the food noise, all the food rules, all the fluff, all the bullshit that people are trying to sell you that don't even work. Okay. So let's just really focus on those top 10 things in this podcast episode. And before we dive into them, I'm going to start by saying, if you want to lose body fat, if your goal is fat loss, you have to be in a calorie deficit. You have to be consuming fewer calories than you are expending. This is really the one thing that really has to happen. Because how do you get into a calorie deficit? Well, there's lots and lots of ways of going about it. But again, this podcast episode is about those biggest, most impactful things that help mums get into a calorie deficit and stay in a calorie deficit without being hungry, without feeling really, really restricted. And that actually works with the realities of having small kids. Okay, so let's get into these 10 tips and hacks. Number one, eat actual meals. Eat proper meals. Stop grazing or snacking on food throughout the day. So many mums fall into this grazing pattern where they're just nibbling at little bits of food throughout the day. This does two big things, or three big things. One, it causes you to never feel full and fueled. Two, it causes you to eat far more calories than you actually need. And three, it causes a lot of decision fatigue. It's very hard to keep track of what you've eaten. You end up being like, oh, how long ago did I eat? Should I eat again? How much should I eat? It just causes a lot of decision making. And you only have so many decision making credits a day. Eating proper meals gets rid of a lot of that. And what I recommend is eating 4 proper meals a day. No need to reinvent the wheel here. Breakfast, lunch, afternoon snack, and dinner. This works for most people most of the time. Each meal is 4 hours apart at what I call anchor points. What works for most people, again, is, well, that's obviously not going to be possible every single meal, but aiming for at least 1 or 2 meals a day where you do have half of your plate vegetables, quarter of a plate of protein, and a quarter of a plate of carbs. And then you are eating a big portion of something that is nice and filling and that will keep you satisfied for 3 to 4 hours. Most women snack and then they're hungry every hour, but they only eat a little bit. And then because they've only eaten a little bit, they then get hungry an hour later. And the only way to get out of this cycle is to eat proper meals and spread your meals out 4 hours apart. So that you're getting a bit of a break as well. You get like your digestion gets a bit of a break. And then once you've got this meal plan or these meal times set up, you can work at making sure that you're eating enough at each meal time to get you through to the next meal. And you're not having to constantly think about what you're eating and how much you're eating. Tip number 2 is keep it simple. This is so important for mums. I cannot tell you the number of times that I tell my clients to just take 2 slices of bread or a pita if you're in Israel, put 2 slices of cheese in it. That's 50 grams of cheese. And there you go. You got a cheese toastie. It's 400 calories, 19 grams of protein, and it'll keep you full for 4 hours. Not every meal has to be an elaborate salad or some fancy meal or some kind of, protein cake, pancake thing that took a load of prep and, you have to put in the oven for 20 minutes. Like, not everything has to be like, a chocolate lava breakfast or overnight oats that takes some prep. It can just be some really basic things that you throw together and gives you the basic nutrition that you need and keeps you full for a number of hours. And you don't have to think too much about. Stop thinking every meal has to be perfect. Now, the number of women who say to me, oh, but Jen, if I just have like a cheese toastie at lunch, I feel like it's not good enough. Like I should be having something better than this for my lunch. But if they weren't having the cheese toastie, they're like, oh, it's white bread and dairy. In their head, it's like a bad thing. But if they weren't having this cheese toastie, they'd literally be eating like chocolate and biscuits and crisps. It's so funny to me that they don't want to eat the bread and cheese because they think it's not healthy enough, but then they're just snacking on crap instead. I've worked with so many women and got them to just eat these really simple meals, especially when they're breastfeeding or when they have very little kids or lots of kids, or they're going through a particularly busy patch, or, they have sick children. These sorts of meals are absolute lifesavers. And you need to stop following accounts that tell you that you need to make elaborate meals from scratch 4 times a day. I get it. There are some accounts on Instagram that are just so aesthetic and they take you through like what I eat in a day and these beautiful like edited reels with like these really nice, like cottage cheese, like bread and some really fancy salads and really fancy shakes with matcha and spirulina or whatever's fashionable today or at the moment. But really, it doesn't have to be that complicated. It doesn't have to be a different meal plan every day and 4 different meals every day. It doesn't need to be something that takes a load of prep. It can just be really, really simple. And I've got such great results with myself and with my clients, just really, really simplifying things because this is what is practical and you can actually do as a mum. Okay, number 3 is a little bit more complicated, but it's super duper important. Understand calorie density. So some of your favorite foods or mum's favorite go-to foods are things like dates, dried fruit, nuts, like 70% chocolate, nut butters, crackers, granola. These foods are very, very calorie dense. They are 400, 500, 600 calories per 100 grams. What this means is it feels like you haven't eaten anything, but you've actually consumed a huge amount of energy. So you go and have like a handful of walnuts and a couple of dates, and you're like, okay, I feel like I haven't eaten very much. That feels very light, but you've actually just eaten 400 calories. And you're hungry literally an hour later. So you haven't actually achieved fullness. Whereas if you were to have like my cheese toastie that I mentioned before, you would be full for like 4 hours from that. Think about it. What keeps you more full? 2 dates and a handful of nuts or a cheese toastie. And if you want to lose weight and keep it off, you have to start thinking this way. You have to start thinking in terms of calorie density. And most mums and most women tend to choose the very calorie dense foods because they feel like they're going off of this acute sensation of like, I feel like I haven't had that much, but actually they've consumed a huge amount of calories. So your body cannot register calories eaten. So it doesn't say, oh, I've had 400 calories. now I'm full. And what it actually registers is the overall volume of food that you've eaten. So if you, going back to that fruit and nuts, it can't say, okay, that's 400 calories, that's enough energy for me. It just notices the overall weight and volume of that, which is very, very low. Whereas if you eat something like bread and cheese, a lot of people will be like, oh, well, that'll make me feel really full and I'd feel like I've eaten a lot. But that's kind of the point, because you've still put the same amount of calories into your body, but now you're going to be full for a long time and feel very satisfied. So you have to stop thinking about just calorie density, because anything's low calorie if you have a small enough portion. You want to start thinking about calorie density, and you want to start prioritizing foods that are less than 200 calories per 100 grams. That's how you ensure that you're full and also in a calorie deficit. So that's not the easiest of the tips to kind of understand and to get your head around, but it's probably the most impactful one if you implement it in your life, and if you start recognizing foods that are less calorie dense and start prioritizing those, you get so much more full for the same number of calories, and it will make a huge difference to your fat loss efforts. Okay, number 4 is stop adding fat to everything. So there is this stupid myth that has gone on for way too long that in order to stay fuller for longer, you need to add fats to your meals. It slows gastric emptying, or it slows blood spikes or whatever. It stops you from feeling full. This is dumb. It just doesn't actually work. I'm always amazed at the number of people who parrot this, because it's like, have you actually tried it? It doesn't actually work. So the thing about fats is that they are very calorie dense, which is what I went over in the last point. So for example, if you take a tablespoon of peanut butter, and I'm talking 15 grams of peanut butter, I'm talking about a tablespoon measure. I'm not talking about a big heaped tablespoon, which is actually probably more 3 times as much as what you think it is. But if you just take one of those small measures, tablespoon measures, and you just fill it flat with peanut butter, 15 grams of peanut butter is 100 calories. And it's not filling at all, again, because it doesn't have very much overall weight. It's only 15 grams. So your body only registers 15 grams of food eaten. And it's only a very small amount of volume. If, on the other hand, you added 1 slice of bread to your meal, which is most slices of just standard sliced bread, 50 grams, it's 130 calories tops, but you would be way fuller because it has much more volume for the same number of calories. So again, 50 grams instead of 15 grams, it's 3 times as much volume for the same number, or just a little bit more in this case, of calories. So many women try to cut out carbs, but carbs actually make you really, really full if you have for the same number of calories as fats do. And so many women are adding tons of fats to their meals to try and get full, but they're just adding hundreds of calories a day, but not actually achieving the fullness that they want to achieve. And therefore, they're not able to get into a calorie deficit. So this is one of the most pernicious myths I find that's just so pervasive. So many women believe this, and so many nutritionists and fat loss experts and dietitians say this. And it just blows my mind, because if you've ever done it, if you just try it yourself, have 3 eggs and a tablespoon of peanut butter. Tell me how full you feel. And then the next day, have 3 eggs and a slice of bread, and tell me how full you feel. I guarantee you will be so much more full from the slice of bread with the peanut butter. So this is just such a huge thing. If you just start realizing how many calories are in the fats that you're eating and start reducing the fats that you're adding. Another example is having a shake and putting in some peanut butter, or having oats and putting a tablespoon of peanut butter for fullness. It's so ridiculous. You're just adding calories and not adding any fullness. So if you just stop doing this, you'll remove so many calories from your diet without really making any effort. Tip number 5 is eat like a toddler. And what I mean by that is that most toddlers have a few foods that they love and they just eat all the time. And it's really hard. Mums drive themselves crazy about trying to get their kids to eat more variety. But it's actually just really normal for kids to like a small range of foods and have these safe foods that they like to eat over and over and over again. And so first of all, if you start eating like your toddler, it will be so much easier. Rinse, repeat the same foods over and over again. Endless variety makes it really, really difficult to know what you're eating. And it makes it really hard to keep track of how many calories are in things. If you figure out a few meals that you, one, like to eat, and two, keep you full for 3 to 4 hours, and three, are the right calorie target, like the right portion sizes that help you hit your calorie target. What you can then do is just rinse, repeat them over and over again. And once you know how many calories are in them in particular and how they fit into your overall calorie goal, you can you don't need to track it every time or figure it out every time. You know that, okay, this cheese toastie has 400 calories and 19 grams of protein. Boom. Every time I have it, I don't need to weigh it and track it and figure it out. Like, I've got that sorted. So if you figure out a few meals like that, you can just rinse, repeat them over and over again. And it's very minimal effort, but it's quite easy to stay in a calorie deficit. And so, you know, one of the things I talk about a lot is that I have a cheese toastie most days in the evening because that's all I want to eat in the evening. I know how many calories is in it. Sometimes I add tuna to it and have like a tuna melt, which is amazing, but it hits all the spots for me. It's simple, it's filling, it's satisfying. These obviously have to be meals that you enjoy. If you hate cheese, this isn't gonna, if you hate melted cheese on bread, which is like, you know, that's very weird. You're not going to enjoy a cheese toastie, and that shouldn't be part of your repertoire. But if you do enjoy it, then it's amazing because it's simple. It takes no time to prepare. It keeps you full, and it's like zero brain power. What so many women do is they try to lose weight, but they're constantly varying. Every single meal and every single day needs to look different, and they need to rotate all their breakfast. Stop doing that, right? I get it. You do need some variety. You do need a little bit of nutritional variety, but it is really, really overrated. And mums are far too concerned about it. And again, it ends up contributing a lot to decision fatigue. And if they just knuckle down on, like, you know, a few key foods that they can rinse, repeat over and over again, they would save so much brain power for other things. And just as an addendum to that is that you can do the same with your kids, right? If your kids like certain foods, instead of trying to constantly vary their diets, just let them eat the same things over and over. Obviously, make sure they're getting a balanced diet and they're getting a little bit of variety in there. But you can really, really start to automate everything you do in the kitchen by just sticking to like everyone's favorite meals and just rinse repeating them rather than adding variety just for the sake of it. Number 6 is track your food. This is boring and it's tedious. No one likes to do it. But a period of honest tracking and honestly tracking everything, it can be so eye-opening and you can learn so much. And it teaches you so much about the calories that are in things, how much fullness you get from those things. Like, it's interesting to eat 900 calories and be like, I don't feel full from this. I'm hungry 2 hours later. Like, this is not a good filling meal. Whereas this other thing is way more filling and for way less calories, and it keeps me full for like 4 hours. It can be so instructive for helping you figure out what actually suits you and what actually helps you stick to your calories. Again, being in a calorie deficit is the only way to actually lose body fat. And so tracking is the most reliable way to do that. It's not 100% accurate, and it does have a bit of a learning curve. Lots of people make a lot of mistakes when they track. And I'm going to do a separate podcast episode on the most common tracking mistakes so that you can track more accurately and have a better idea of what's in your food. But if you do it really honestly for a period of time, it's really eye-opening. If you, also most people eat the same 15 to 20 foods 80% of the time. So once you've tracked those foods and you understand what's in those foods, it starts to get really, really easy because it's in your history and it's just rinse, repeat, and you understand portion sizes and all of that kind of thing. And then it's just kind of occasionally having something a bit different. And even if you don't do it 100% consistently, learning what's actually in the foods that you're eating is seriously so eye-opening, so instructive. And once you've learned what's in everything, you can't unknow it. So you can just use that knowledge then to make better and more informed food choices, which I feel is a big part of what a lot of women lack. They make their food choices based on diets they've done in the past, or food rules that they have and that they've built up over the years, or things that they intuitively think are bad for them, like dairy or carbs or sugar. And they're not actually making informed decisions based on what actually keeps them full, what actually gives them the nutrition that they need, what actually helps them hit their calorie target. And seriously, seriously, tracking honestly and with curiosity for a period of time is just so useful for learning all of this stuff. Tip number 7 is to stop waiting until you're starving hungry. You need to eat when you are a 6 out of 10 in terms of hunger. This is because if you are too hungry, your eyes are bigger than your belly, you will take too big of a portion size. You'll get this get in my belly syndrome and you won't be able to control yourself and you'll overeat. And you'll also find it impossible to say no to anything that's tempting. So a really good example of this is like a lot of mums, they're busy with their kids or they're working. And so they don't want to stop. They get a bit hungry, their tummy's grumbling, but they keep on working. Then all of a sudden it hits them like a truck. Oh my God, I'm starving hungry. Then they go to the fridge. And what happens is all of your mental capacities just shut down. You can't think, you can't make decisions about what to eat, and you just start picking at things. That's when you start grabbing bits of cheese or bits of chocolate and start eating them while you're figuring out what to eat. And by the time you've eaten enough to get, you're usually grabbing very calorie dense foods. And by the time you've eaten enough to make you full because you're eating calorie dense foods, now you've eaten like 500 calories before you've even started figuring out what you're going to have as a meal. And then you get into this, your rational, like, cognitive capacities start coming back online. And then you're like, oh shit, like, what have I done? And then all the guilt starts coming in, and then you've not actually eaten what you need to eat. You've not actually had proper nutrition. You're not actually full. It just makes so many problems. So stop waiting until you're starving hungry. This is the biggest. You don't get extra brownie points. You don't lose more weight for being starving hungry. You need to start eating when you're a 6 or a 7 out of 10 in terms of hunger. This is a massive game changer, because when you're a 6 out of 10 in terms of hunger, you can decide to have, something that is more filling, something that's more nutritious, decide to have a proper meal instead of just grabbing things and shoving them in your mouth. And you can decide what the portion size, and you can stop when you've had that portion size. It makes it so much easier. Everyone's always willpower, but your willpower goes to 0 when you're a 10 out of 10 in terms of hunger. Whereas when you're a 6 out of 10, it requires much less willpower it still requires some to choose the right things and the right amounts. But you have to eat anyway. So there's no point waiting until you're starving hungry. Eat when you're a little bit hungry. Number 7, stop cutting out carbs. For the love of God, carbs are not inherently fattening. And so many women are still doing low carb diets, and it absolutely kills me. Most people do not function well on low carb diets for a number of reasons. One, because you just don't feel as full. As I mentioned before, what ends up happening when you go on a low carb diet is because carbs are actually very, very filling. Having some, like I talked about before, having some bread with your meal, having some rice with your meal. This is actually potatoes are so filling. It really makes your meal, if you have protein and carbs, it's so much more filling than just protein and vegetables, so protein, carbs and vegetables is so much more filling than just protein and vegetables. And it's so much more filling than just protein and fat. Carbs are so much more filling than fats. And so most women end up starving hungry on a low carb diet. And they also still end up consuming too many calories. Why? Because they are instead of having carbs, they're having fats, because fats are healthy, right? Fats are good for you. You do need some fats in your diet. But most women are eating far too many fats. And so they're consuming far too many calories and they're not feeling full. The other reason why low carb diets suck is because they are actually very, very convenient, especially bread, right? It's very easy to throw a meal together. It's very easy to eat with one hand. And the third reason why cutting carbs is not a good idea for most people is because not eating carbs sucks. It's so hard to eat in a low carb diet. It just isn't practical. So stop eating high fat, low carb diets and start eating not necessarily high carb diets. You have to control your carb intake, but start including carbs in your meals and reducing your fat intake, not going down to 0. You do need fat for long-term health, but try to include more carbs and sensible portions of carbs, like 100 grams of rice, 50 grams of bread, 200 grams of rice, 100 grams of bread, that sort of thing, according to, your calorie budget, and reducing your fat intake. And you'll be so much more fuller. You'll enjoy your diet more. It'll be so much easier to stick to. And it's just so much more filling. Tip number 9 is Learn how to get back on track. This is just the most important thing, because most women, I mean, I say everything is the most important thing, but most women have this mindset of like, it has to be perfect. I'm never allowed to slip up. I have to stick to my diet all the time. And then as soon as they have a bad day and they eat too much chocolate, they go over their calories, or they go out for lunch and they eat too much, they're like, oh, now I've ruined everything. And they just give up altogether. They get fuckititis. Learning how to just brush it off and get back on track is the most important thing you can do, because you will have bad days. You will have holidays where you eat too much and gain some weight. You will have meals where you just go fuck it and you just eat too much. I eat too much at times. Just have meals or days where I just feel like eating rubbish. But the key isn't to eat perfectly all the time. That's impossible. And if you think that you need to eat perfectly all the time in order to succeed, it's never, ever, ever going to happen, right? You've got to stop being a perfectionist. You have to be okay with like messing up and eating too much and eating the wrong things, and just get back on track the next day, and don't give up just because you've had a bad day. And yes, it will slow you down, but you can still make so much progress having lots of bad days. And getting to a healthy weight and keeping the weight off is not about eating perfectly all the time. It's about being able to eat imperfectly at times and then just get back to your healthy eating, get back to your diet, get back to the journey that you're on. Okay, tip number 10 is go to bed. Stop staying up late after the kids go to bed. Being tired causes so many problems. So a lot of women overeat at night, sitting there watching TV, snacking on things, having a little binge. If you feel tired constantly throughout the day and sleep deprived, it's literally going to solve that problem. If you struggle with sugar cravings, it's going to solve that problem, right? So many sugar cravings and carb cravings are because we're actually just tired. And also, if you don't have energy to work out, guess what? If you sleep more, it's going to be so much easier to stick to your diet, to do your workout, to do your steps, and to not struggle with sugar cravings. And it also stops you from eating crap before you go to bed. So it just kills so many birds with one stone. So many mums are living off of fumes, are not sleeping enough. And sometimes, look, you have babies that wake you up, toddlers that don't sleep well. I get it, right? But sometimes if you're going to bed an hour or two after the kids go to bed, or sometimes, if the kids go to bed at 8 and you're staying up until midnight, guess what? You just need to go to bed earlier. It is what it is. You can't just go to bed as late as you want when you know you're going to get woken up at 6 a.m, or you're going to get woken up a couple of times a night. You have to get to bed earlier. And I know it sucks. I know it means giving up other things and time to ourselves and stuff like that, but you are going to feel so much better if you just sleep more. And finally, my last tip is to feed yourself like you feed your kids. Because I know so many mums who lovingly make nutritious, healthy, tasty meals for their children, and then they just live off of the scraps, and they're just picking soggy schnitzel or chicken nuggets off of their kids' plates, eating their leftovers, eating what they're not eating, then eating like a pack of biscuits, like snacking all day on bits of chocolate and cookies and whatever. If you would not allow your child to eat that way, you should not allow yourself to eat that way as well. And the reason is because you love them, right? You don't stop your children from eating crap or from eating too much because they're fat and you want to punish them and you hate them, right? Like, which is where so many women come from. They come from this point of like, oh, I'm so fat and ugly and I feel so awful and I hate myself. And that's why I'm not allowed to eat these biscuits. It's not a punishment. You got to shift your thinking to like feeding yourself with the same love and care that you would feed your children. If your children are deserving of having proper meals and proper food and proper nutrition, then you are too. If you don't allow your children to just graze all day, like think about it, right? Do you just let your child just go, okay, mummy, I just want to eat some biscuits for breakfast. Now I just want to have some like Bamba or some crisps. And now I just want some more chocolate. And now I want some ice cream. And now I want like a bit of like, you don't let them eat that way and just graze that way on crap all the way through the day. So you shouldn't be letting yourself do that either. And also, if you don't want your child to just go, oh, I can't be bothered making dinner tonight, I'm just going to eat a whole packet of biscuits, or I'm just going to eat up like a whole bar of chocolate in front of the TV. If you wouldn't let your child eat the whole pack of biscuits or a whole bar of chocolate, You don't let yourself do it as either. And again, it comes from a place of love. You don't let your child, you set those boundaries with your child, and you don't let them eat that way because you love them and because you want what's best for them, not because you hate them and you want to punish them and they're not allowed to have these things, right? So just take that mindset shift on board. I think that's an important shift for mums, is that, you're important too. And also a lot of mums tend to frame it as, if I eat this way and if I take care of myself and if I work out, I can look after my kids better. And you can give them a better, happier, healthier mum. And that's going to improve your parenting 100%, right? And that does matter. But also, just because you are deserving of it, you are deserving of eating proper meals, even if they're really simple cheese toasties. You are deserving of sort of feeling fueled and like taking care of your health and taking care of, your nutrition and taking care of your body fat percentage. If these things matter to you, you're deserving of that. So you have to shift it to being like, these things are not a punishment. You're not doing this because you hate yourself and you're trying to whip yourself into doing the right thing or punish yourself. You're doing it out of like the same love and care that you do it for your children. I think that's a really big shift for a lot of mums. Okay, that's it. Those are my tips for how to get the biggest bang for your buck in terms of just like, the return on investment for the effort. Hopefully some of these tips you can just implement straight away, like stopping adding fats to everything, or like not cutting out carbs, or, having some really simple meals. Some of them, I know they require a little bit more work, but just focus on one thing at a time. Come back to this podcast, implement something else, and just focus on like the one thing at a time. Once that becomes habit, then add the next thing. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments below, and